This changes everything. A coup has begun in the United States. Trump has given the green light to fateful sanctions against Russia. Lindsey Graham managed to deliver an extremely important message about Ukraine to the head of the White House. Rubio is entering the game with renewed strength. The first details. A historic moment. Europe has begun building its missile shield around Ukraine. Kyiv has taken the lead of the anti-ballistic coalition. Freya is preparing to turn Russian ballistic missiles into a pile of scrap metal. Thank you. Firepoint has unveiled new missiles for the first time. The Kremlin has lost its main advantage. The Ukrainian Armed Forces have launched the Armageddon of revenge at the front. The beginning of the cleansing of the occupiers. Several of Putin's best regiments eliminated at once. Syrski's new tactics have opened Pandora's box right on the front line. And all of this has happened just now. Hello, I'm Daryna Huts'kalo, and we're getting started. After the US coup, the Kremlin no longer has any chance of swaying Donald Trump to its side. The death of Lindsey Graham showed everything. The head of the White House is ready to support the adoption of a bipartisan bill on sanctions against Russia, initiated by the senator who earned a reputation as Moscow's fiercest opponent in American politics. CNN reports this. On
Monday evening, CNN correspondent Caitlin Collins asked him whether he planned to sign the sanctions bill. And he replied, "Yes, we are discussing it. We will make a decision on this very soon."
According to Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, the sanctions package should serve as a kind of tribute to Graham's memory. The bill provides the U.S. president with the authority to impose high tariffs and sanctions against countries that continue to purchase Russian oil, natural gas, and uranium, thereby supporting the Russian economy amid the war against Ukraine.
Tyon said that in recent days, Graham's sanctions package was his most important achievement. And this will undoubtedly become an incredible legacy for him.
It should be noted that Graham's unexpected death a few days ago was a serious blow, not only for American politics but also for Ukraine. In
the person of this senator, Kyiv lost its main supporter among the Republicans, who served as an envoy under President Donald Trump.
Nevertheless, Darlene Graham Norden, Lindsey Graham's sister, took his seat in the U.S. Senate after his death. Ukrainian experts, however, remain optimistic and hint that there are people in the White House who could finally close Washington's doors to Moscow.
After Lindsey Graham's death, Marco Rubio and part of the right-wing camp around Trump may become the voices supporting Ukraine in the U.S.
At this very moment, Ukraine is beginning to build a new security system for all of Europe. Kyiv, together with 9 other countries, is officially launching an anti-ballistic coalition. Its main goal is to create a unified shield that will protect the continent from ballistic attacks.
We, the leaders of Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Sweden, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom, recognizing the growing threat posed by ballistic missiles and the increasing importance of defensive capabilities for the security of the European continent. Today we announce the launch of an exclusively defensive coalition on missile defense. We express our support for its flagship project, which is to rapidly develop missile defense capabilities.
The new anti-ballistic shield will not be built from scratch. It will unite the existing European air defense and missile defense systems, as well as promising new developments that partner countries are just beginning to implement. And most importantly, Europe has officially recognized that it is specifically the Ukrainian experience in countering Russian missile attacks that will become one of the key foundations of the new security system. It is the Freya project by the company Firepoint that could become the foundation of the new pan-European air and missile defense system. For this purpose, the FP-7X interceptor missile has already been created. At this very moment, Kyiv is not only defending its own skies but also offering allies a solution that could fundamentally change the security of the entire continent. Now officially, Russia is losing its main trump card. Ballistic blackmail, Ukraine is receiving a major boost from France. Paris will transfer its Rafale fighter jets and grant licenses for the production of anti-aircraft missiles. Aster 30 for the SAMP-T air defense system, AASM hammer-guided bombs, and Scalp cruise missiles.
I want to thank France for its willingness to support Ukraine with additional air defense systems already this year. And thank you, Emmanuel, personally for your readiness to grant the licenses. This is a serious step forward. This will help a lot. Licenses for Asters, Scalps.
The world is paying more and more attention to Ukraine. It is here today that solutions are being tested, which tomorrow may protect all of Europe. Kyiv has already become the main laboratory of modern warfare, and Ukrainian experience is turning into the foundation of a new anti-ballistic shield for the continent. A lightning breakthrough by the armed forces of Ukraine. The fighters of the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skelia literally broke through the Russian defenses and advanced 25 kilometers deep into the occupied territory. 6 settlements have already returned to Ukrainian control.
The assault operations were carried out with constant air support. Enemy positions along the routes of our unit's advance were destroyed around the clock. Systematic efforts were made to detect and eliminate enemy pilots.
As a result, the size of the Russian army has noticeably decreased. As a result, the 120th Russian Marine Division and the 656th Motorized Rifle Regiment, which the Russian forces relied on for logistics, suffered critical losses. However, they were forced to retreat urgently. The Institute for the Study of War notes that these successes became possible thanks to strikes on Russian logistics, the destruction of UAV crews, and troop concentration points, which weakened the offensive capabilities of the Russian army. Finally, the level of tension is gradually decreasing, and Kyiv and Warsaw have sat down at the negotiating table. Zelensky and Nawrocki had a long conversation at the NATO summit. And new signals of support for Ukraine have come from Poland. Have the partners managed to find a formula that will allow them to leave their disputes behind and strengthen their united front against Moscow? Let's watch.
Historical disagreements over the Volyn tragedy have opened Pandora's box in relations between Kyiv and Warsaw. At first, Polish officials threatened to block Ukraine's European integration. Then they changed their minds about giving us their fighter jets. And last week, the Ukrainian issue caused internal discord among the Poles. The opposition accused the government of secretly transferring scarce missiles to Kyiv, Patriot. They say this disarms Poland.
These are the only missiles capable of intercepting Russian Iskander missiles, which pose a threat to Poland and are stationed in the Kaliningrad region.
The intensity of the debate was so high that it forced the government to declassify military aid to Ukraine. The acute political crisis also affected Ukrainians in Poland. In Poznan, 3 Poles broke into a Ukrainian woman's office and interrogated her, asking about her attitude toward Bandera. And in Gdansk, a man was detained for insulting a Ukrainian cashier in a store. Please, Father. And just 3 years ago, historical differences didn't concern Poles this much. In July 2023, President Zelensky and then Polish President Andrzej Duda honored the memory of the victims of the Volyn tragedy in Lutsk. Both would write under their posts, "Memory unites us." Now this statement is undergoing a serious test of strength. A difficult period in history, which became the subject of political populist manipulation, has affected relations between the countries. Today, the dispute began when Volodymyr Zelensky granted one of the military units the honorary name of the Heroes of the UPA. This stirred up part of the Polish public, since in Poland the UPA is blamed for the killing of Poles during World War II. Karol Nawrocki stripped Zelensky of Poland's highest award, the Order of the White Eagle. In response, all Ukrainian presidents renounced their Polish awards, a number of current politicians. To ease the tension, Budanov and Sybiha even traveled to Warsaw, and emotions subsided a bit. On the sidelines of the NATO summit in Ankara, the presidents of Ukraine and Poland spoke face-to-face for more than an hour. And although they did not reach agreement on all issues, Zelensky and Nawrocki came to terms. The common enemy of both countries is Russia, and it is necessary to continue the dialogue.
Priority issues. Undoubtedly, this is security. And we understand that here we have one enemy, and that is Russia. Next is the economy. Polish business is interested. We are open to our Polish partners. And historical issues were also discussed. In my opinion, we need to be constructive and delicate so as not to destroy the important, friendly, neighborly relations between Ukraine and Poland.
Because only Moscow benefits from disputes between Kyiv and Warsaw regarding historical issues, the Polish president emphasizes the need to find a way to reach a compromise.
Unresolvable historical issues should not close the door to dialogue on matters that unite us. We did not come to this meeting with the hope that all issues would be resolved.
An unexpected pro-Ukrainian statement was also made by the Polish Minister of Defense, who, by the way, is in Ukraine today to honor the memory of the victims of the Volyn tragedy. Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz lashed out at critics of military aid to Kyiv and stated that Warsaw will continue to support Ukraine.
I prefer that our Patriots shoot down Russian missiles over Kyiv, not over Warsaw. Those who criticize Polish support for Ukraine have lost their minds. It drives me mad.
Kyiv and Warsaw have already resumed negotiations on the transfer of fighter jets, possibly on an exchange basis. But does this mean that historical differences will be pushed into the background? It is possible that, against the backdrop of upcoming elections, Polish politicians will continue to play the anti-Ukrainian card. And according to analysts' forecasts, this is an additional storm that benefits only Russia. Olena Honcharenko, We Are Ukraine, Marathon United News.
In Russia, gasoline is getting more expensive and disappearing, while Ukraine is striking exactly where it hurts the Kremlin the most. While Russians are searching for fuel, the unmanned systems forces are turning the occupiers' maritime logistics into complete chaos. Tankers are going to the bottom one after another, and oil refineries are losing their last hope of recovery after the strikes. Magyar's birds are showing who's in charge both in the air and at sea. The armed forces of Ukraine are doing everything to ensure that Putin runs out not only of loud statements, but also of real resources for war. Thank you. Has the point of no return really been reached? Let's watch.
Moscow and Stavropol Krai are under attack by Ukrainian drones. The governor of Stavropol, Vladimir Vladimirov, stated that as a result of the strikes, a fire broke out in the industrial zone in the village of Vyazniki. Later, analysts confirmed that after the attack, an oil depot caught fire. What a nightmare. Meanwhile, at the oil refinery in Syzran, after the Ukrainian drone attack, according to intelligence, 100% of the primary oil processing capacity and about 10% of the secondary processing capacity have been put out of commission. The strike on the Syzran facility, the oil refinery in Samara region, suffered one of the most severe attacks in the history of this enterprise, among all those that have ever been carried out against it, and Ukrainian drones have attacked it 11 times already since March 2024.
Everything is burning. A drone is flying over there. There's another explosion again.
The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed that explosions occurred at the Syzran oil refinery and a large-scale fire broke out. This oil refinery is one of the largest enterprises of Rosneft and the key refinery of the southern Volga region. A significant fire broke out on the premises of the enterprise, as evidenced by photos and videos from eyewitnesses. The plant produces gasoline, diesel fuel, aviation gas, fuel oil, and bitumen. Its design capacity is 8.5 million tons of oil per year. The head of the Samara region, Vyacheslav Vodoryshchov, wrote that as a result of drone strikes, one of the industrial enterprises was damaged. Without specifying which one exactly, there were also the now traditional threats from Russian officials.
I remind you that it is forbidden to film, publish, or take photos and videos of UAVs and the consequences of their use. Approaching UAV debris is dangerous.
So in recent times, almost all of Russia's key oil refineries have been attacked, which, according to analysts, is causing prices in the Federation to rise on virtually everything. According to official Russian statistics alone, the annual increase in gasoline prices in Russia has reached almost 22%. This is the highest figure since 2010. At the same time as the strikes on oil refineries, Ukrainian forces continue the total destruction of Russian maritime logistics. The commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Unmanned Systems, Robert Brovdy-Magyar, stated that on the night of July 12th, Ukrainian drones struck 14 Russian vessels. According to him, 10 tankers and 4 ferries were attacked. In total, over the past week from July 6th to 13th, Ukrainian drones attacked 90 Russian Shadow Fleet vessels.
The strikes on tankers and ferries that support the operation of Russia's Shadow Fleet make it more difficult to use these vessels to circumvent international sanctions and gradually reduce Russia's ability to sustain its war economy and provide logistical support to its forces.
Russian authorities are also reporting Ukrainian drone strikes on tankers in the Sea of Azov. However, in their official statements, Russian officials are once again spreading disinformation to downplay the scale of the fuel crisis. These reports mention a significantly smaller number of vessels attacked by drones than in Brovdy. Yet the Russian authorities do not explain why the whole of Russia and the territories it occupies are standing in lines for gasoline.
I just don't even know how to behave anymore. I think I have only one nerve cell left. Military gasoline. Because I
am from Azovsk, not from Kuveivsk. For its part, Reuters writes that the Russian authorities have halted navigation due to Ukrainian drone strikes. On the Azov-Don Canal, which connects the Don River with the Sea of Azov and is used in particular by grain exporters. The agency reminded that up to a quarter of all Russian wheat exports pass through the Sea of Azov. Meanwhile, in Crimea, the lines for gasoline are disappearing, but not because the Ministry of Fuel and Energy of the occupied peninsula announced the free sale of fuel, or because no one can afford to pay for it. It is now official that at gas stations in Yalta, gasoline costs at least 5 times more than what Russian propaganda claims, and it's approaching 400 rubles. That's about $5 per liter.
380 hryvnias. A liter of gasoline is more expensive than a liter of milk. More expensive than vodka. So you could drive on alcohol instead. That's crazy. No, seriously, guys. At 380 hryvnias.
Due to Ukrainian long-haul sanctions, many regions of Crimea are without electricity, communication, water or gas. According to enemy public channels, the occupation authorities promised to resolve the energy supply situation in Crimea only by mid-August. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues the land-based logistical lockdown of the peninsula. Even though the Russians have started to publicly record the consequences of Ukrainian Defense Forces strikes on the so-called Novorossiya highway to Crimea less frequently, the number of strikes is not decreasing, writes the Telegram channel Crimean Wind. At the same time, across all of Russia, it is becoming commonplace to see lines of hundreds of cars at a single gas station where there is still some gasoline left, at more or less reasonable prices. Drivers can spend almost a whole day waiting for fuel, and even that does not guarantee success.
I've now spent the night at the gas station in the north, resting without gasoline. After 15 hours of waiting, we finally refueled.
Meanwhile, at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is occupied by Russian troops, the fuel for the diesel generators is running out. The reserves are about 50% of the required amount. This will be enough for approximately 11 days of autonomous operation. According to Reuters estimates, due to Ukrainian attacks on Russian oil refineries, diesel fuel production volumes have dropped by almost 40%. This is the lowest figure in the past 20 years, and it has already approached the level of domestic consumption. Alexander Muzichuk, Podrobnosti, Inter TV channel Marathon United News.
A very unpleasant surprise is brewing for the Kremlin. The United States is opening the way for Ukraine to produce its own Patriot missiles. It will take time to launch, but the main decision is already on the table. Russia is starting to get nervous. Right now, Putin is losing his main advantage: missile terror. Ukraine is showing the enemy a red card and preparing to close the skies. Could this very fateful decision by Washington as a sign of support for Kyiv finally bring Moscow to its knees? More on this, without embellishment, coming up.
Although the permission to manufacture missiles for the Patriots is still only verbal, no one doubts anymore that Ukraine will receive it very soon. Now, the pressing question is when the first missiles will roll off the assembly line. After all, just this week, Russia launched a massive attack on Kyiv with drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. And what about the other regions of Ukraine? The United States did not publicly respond to these strikes. Neither the White House nor the State Department even expressed words of sympathy. But just a few days later, at a meeting with Zelensky in Ankara, Donald Trump himself brought up the topic of missiles for Patriots, and he proposed a solution that Kyiv had been requesting from Washington for years.
A little bird told me that we will grant Ukraine the right to produce missiles for the Patriots. We will show them how it's done. It's very complicated, but you'll quickly understand the complexity. We will talk with the president about granting them licenses to produce Patriots. Pretty cool, right?
Trump even threatened that now Zelensky wouldn't be able to complain that the US isn't giving enough, saying, "Do it yourselves." However, he noted that the Patriot manufacturer isn't aware of this yet, but he'll sort everything out. After a warm conversation with the president of Ukraine, Trump promised to call the head of the Kremlin. And we remember well how often after such contacts the American leader would change his rhetoric. But this time, Trump didn't even call Putin. The Kremlin took offense and stated that Washington is demonstrating duplicity in its position on the Russian-Ukrainian war, granting licenses and weapons while at the same time claiming it wants to promote the peace process.
As for the Patriots, yes, that's an obvious fact. The United States is actively continuing to supply Ukraine with weapons and military technologies. We really do know this. We are not looking at the situation through rose-colored glasses. President Putin understands this perfectly well too. That is why there is a certain duplicity in the position of the United States.
It seems that Washington has indeed changed its view of this war. All overseas publications unanimously note that relations between the presidents of the US and Ukraine have noticeably warmed. And this happened when Ukraine began to seize the initiative and regularly strike at Russian energy infrastructure, writes The Hill. And it reminds us that the American leader criticized the previous administration's policy regarding military support for Ukraine. And less than a year and a half ago, he pressured Zelensky, including publicly in the Oval Office, demanding that Ukraine cede its territories to Russia. Now, however, the rhetoric in Washington has changed dramatically.
Are you talking about Ukraine's ability to penetrate deep into Russia for strikes? I think this is one of the dynamics that has changed in this war over the past few months. Namely, because it is becoming increasingly difficult for the Russians to defend their own airspace. We hope that this will create an opening for negotiations to end this war.
But for now, there is neither a ceasefire nor interceptors. If the license is indeed granted, Ukraine will become the third country in the world able to produce Patriot missiles under localization terms. Japan was the first. 20 years ago, it reached an agreement for partial production of PAC-3 missiles at Mitsubishi facilities. It took the Japanese 2 years to launch production. And even now, they still receive key components from the United States. Germany also has a license. In 2022, they reached an agreement with the Americans to produce PAC-2 missiles. They only began building the production line in 2024, and the first missiles have not yet come off the assembly line, and still, to this day, they are expected only next year, and it is promised that they will be immediately delivered to Ukraine. Which specific missile we will be allowed to produce is still unknown, but experts are already warning. The creation of the enterprise and the launch of serial production could take years. Everything will depend on Ukraine's industrial capabilities, the level of localization, and how quickly the manufacturing companies and our governments can reach an agreement. Moreover, Bloomberg and the New York Times warned that a plant in Ukraine would immediately become one of the main targets for Russian strikes. If the enterprise is built in the EU, a major problem still remains: a severe shortage of components and suppliers. Reuters sources report that most likely Ukrainian Patriots will be produced in Germany, where the production line is ready and supply chains are established. But despite this, having domestic production will become a strategic advantage. We will be less dependent on the decisions of our partners and will be able to independently provide for our own air defense.
Ukraine has been recognized by America as a country that is ready to do this. Indeed, right now we have a window of opportunity. Ukraine has become stronger both on the battlefield and in the air. And everyone can see the corresponding results. Undoubtedly, first and foremost, thanks to our military. I am very grateful to them.
A license for the production of missiles for Patriots. The foundation of our air defense could become one of the most important decisions for Ukrainian defense in all the years of the war. But even if the agreements are formalized in the near future, the first Ukrainian missiles will not appear tomorrow or even next year. So, protecting the Ukrainian sky from Russian ballistic missiles will be done by future German, Japanese, and US purchased missiles, which, amid the shortage, the American president has promised to deliver in the near future. From New York, Yuri Hulam and Ukraine Marathon. United News.
With that, we conclude our broadcast. We will continue to follow the most relevant events right now to be the first to tell you about them. Don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.